Welcome to this week's edition of Prep Zone Extra Points, sponsored by John Hoffer Jeep Chrysler. This week featuring Rick Peterson, Tim Beisel, and Brent Maycock.
Hey sports fans, welcome to another edition of Extra Points brought to you by the Topeka Capital Journal. Joining me tonight is our city prep reporter Rick Peterson, our area prep reporter Brent Maycock. I'm Andy Burns. Tim Beisel, lucky for him, is off tonight. We'll go ahead and start with the city game of the week. Saw Topeka Seaman 14-0 over their rival Hayden. Big win there for Seaman. Glenn O'Neill getting a milestone, a couple of milestones actually.
Glenn O'Neill got his 100th career football victory. The impressive thing about that is he's only 3 games into his 10th season. So he's averaged more than 10 wins a year, which is hard to do. It's not a huge deal to Glenn O'Neill, being he has well over 500 victories and a whole bunch of state titles in basketball. But it's still big for this program, which was 2-8 last year. They've already surpassed that win total. They're 3-0 this year, and they get a big win over their rival Hayden. So it's a good starting point for him in his first year at Seaman, and they did a good job tonight, particularly on defense. Simeon Sykes had a defensive touchdown, picked up a fumble and returned it 34 yards. They also got a 34-yard touchdown pass from Dalton Cowan to Kevin Moran's. And like I said, it's a good start for the Vikings.
Yeah, it gives us a good idea about a little bit more about them, because they had relatively easy times in their first 2 games with Topeka West and Highland Park, and maybe going into tonight, we really didn't know exactly what Seaman was going to bring to the table this year. We thought they had a chance to be improved, and I think tonight's performance, especially holding Hayden scoreless, that's no small feat in itself. So I think it shows that they've already started to take some steps in just a short time under Glenn.
Next week, I believe, is Seaman Shawnee Heights, and that'll be a key game for both teams.
Both defenses tonight really bringing it 14-0. Just in the little bit of that game that I saw, looked like a very back and forth defensive battle. No offense really breaking much.
Oh yeah, well, and Hayden, Hayden loses, but they only give up, their defense only gave up 1 touchdown. So they played well too. And Hayden's going to be okay. They're going to be all right. They lost their quarterback, starting quarterback, Samson Houston, in the second quarter, the very first game with a concussion. I expect him back maybe next week. But the thing is, your quarterback takes almost all the reps in preseason, things like that, and then you have to regroup. And I think they're going to be okay. They got too much pride in that school and that program not to be okay. It's just going to take 1 victory or maybe even 1 big play to turn things around.
Yeah, they just had kind of 3 hard luck losses. They open with a Topeka High team that's a very good football team. They have the crazy situation last week where they go down to Emporia on Friday, don't play, have to go back Saturday, seemingly have the game in control and lose that ball game, and then tonight playing obviously a much improved Seaman team. So it's just been a tough start, but we know at the end in Class 4A Division II they're going to be a player.
And our area game of the week, Brent, significantly more high scoring. Nemaha Central downs Holton in the final minute, 43-42. That's a big win for the Thunder. It
was a tremendous win. They beat Holton last year, and that was the first time since, I believe, 1994 that Nemaha had beaten Holton and ended Holton's 7-year run as Big 7 league champions, ended a long league winning streak. And, talking to Warren Seitz, last year's win was nice, but we kind of want to go back and back it up and do it again this year, show it's not just a one-and-done type of thing. And it was a wildly entertaining ball game. When I talked to Warren after the game, he said it was probably the most back-and-forth ball game he's ever been associated with in his 20-some-plus years of coaching. And it was. Holton got out to a 12-0 lead, and Nemaha Central came back, took the lead. There were 8 lead changes in the ball game. 5, I think, in the fourth quarter alone. I mean, it was just back and forth. It was going to be who had the ball last, and Nemaha Central gets the ball down 7, and drives down, gets a touchdown, and they have to decide, would tie and go to overtime, go for 2. They go for 2. Ryan Hazenkamp, the quarterback, gets a big push. The line gets a big push. It looks like a rugby scrum, and after the officials confer, they award him the 2 points, and they get the victory. And it was a wildly entertaining ball game. Both teams just played great offensively. Not a ton of big defense in the game, but Holton rushes for 544 yards as a team and loses. That's pretty hard to do, but but Nemaha was a little bit more balanced and had some quick strikes and had a lot of shorter fields to work than Holton did.
Holton, reason to worry after this kind of slow start?
You know, I think if they had played kind of the way they played in the first two games, there might be. But after talking to Brooks tonight, he said, we got back to playing Holton football on offense at least. And when they rushed for 544 yards, that's Holton football. They pounded. They started the game with a 17-play drive that took like 8 minutes off the clock, or 7.5 minutes, something like that. I mean, it was a typical Holton way to start a football game. I know he reconfigured his entire offensive line this week, and that seemed to really work well for them tonight. So I think going forward, you're going to see Holton continue to get better, which is kind of what they do. They typically, especially with new faces in the backfield, they start slow and then they work. And last year they were 0-2. And then 2-3 after 5 games, and then won 7 straight games to make the state championship game. So I don't think there's really cause for concern for Holton, but they're kind of in the same boat as Hayden. They just kind of need something to go right. Last week they lose on a last-second field goal. This week they lose on a final minute 2-point conversion. So they just need a break to go their way, and kind of like Hayden does, and then they'll get going. And these two teams are going to meet each other in district play later on this year.
Gotta need a break when you give up 43 points on defense. It's you need a couple breaks there when your defense struggles like that.
Exactly.
But moving back to the city, Topeka High shuts out Emporia 40-0. Seems to me like the only thing really standing in Topeka High's way is themselves. A lot of penalties, a lot of things just shooting themselves in the foot. Can't really nitpick too much.
Actually, I think it's 49-0.
Okay.
And so, yes, I mean, they were in control offensively. And you know what? Maybe they did shoot themselves in the foot a little bit, but you can't shoot yourself in the foot too much when you get a shutout against a team that was coming off a big win. And they just, High's got a lot of weapons right now. They played, I think they probably, even though they lost last week at Junction City, they probably gained confidence, showed they can play with a very good team. And Corey Thomas is, in my opinion, an exceptional leader, so that's a good place to start. And then you got probably the best freshman that's come down the pike in this town, and well, probably since Will Geary, and that's Kai Thomas. And Kai Thomas had a defensive touchdown tonight. He caught 7 passes for 59 yards in the TD. He had a 45-yard interception return. He had a short TD run. And, you know, you put him with Corey Thomas, and who had 198 passing yards, 249 total yards, 1 TD run, and 2 DD passes. That's a good place to start. And then they've got some other athletes that they can fill in around them, and they keep getting better defensively.
You know, the law firm of Thomas & Thomas carrying the Trojans right now, it sounds like. And, you know, that was a good win to go shut out Emporia, which, you know, coming off the big win over Hayden, they had a little bit of momentum and probably felt going into the game with Topeka High that, hey, maybe we can play with this team. And Topeka High kind of sucked the life out of them pretty quickly and really never gave them a shot. So a nice victory for Topeka High.
Difference with Topeka High right now is, if you remember a few years ago, High would score 40 points, but sometimes the other team would have more than that. So right now they're playing good defense, which makes it, you know, less, you know, there's some margin of error because they know they're not going to give up a bunch of points.
In other city action, Washburn Rural gets a big win, 31-7 over Shawnee Heights. Their defense was strong tonight. Quarterback Jordan White steps up and leads them to a key win, pushes the Junior Blues to 2-1 this season.
Well, Jordan White, you know, is one of 3 quarterbacks they started the season rotating with, and now it looks like, you know, Michael Schurig's out for the year with an ACL, and the other quarterback hurt his leg tonight, so Jordan White's going to have to step up, and he did tonight. 13-17 passing, 188 yards, 1 TD passing, 1 TD rushing, and then Hunter Browning, their senior running back, had 83 yards rushing and 2 TDs, and they played very good defense against a Heights team that has some offensive weapons.
Yeah, it was a game going in. I think, you know, it was kind of a pick'em game type of deal. You went one way, I believe. I went the other way with my picks, and it was going to be a game where we found out a little bit about Rural and Shawnee Heights after their first 2 games. And I think we found out that Rural's pretty darn good defensively, and when they get some things going offensively, they're not a bad football team.
In other city news, Topeka West continuing to struggle. losing 56-0 to Junction City. Junction City, obviously a good team though. Last week they beat Topeka High, but 56-0. Not a whole lot of good things to take out of that one.
Well, it was a tough draw for West. You know, they're coming off a loss to Heights. They have been struggling, and it doesn't get any easier when you have to go to Junction City.
Yeah.
And Junction City, I think, and I've said it before, I think this is the best Junction City team they've had since they won state a few years ago with Ty Zimmerman. So that's just a tough battle for West, and West needs to just get against some of these teams that they feel like they can compete with. That's the next step they have to take before they worry about getting wins, getting in some games, and then once they get in some teams, there are some teams in this league that they can compete with.
Manhattan making their case for the best team in the Centennial League right now. They blow out Highland Park 50-6. You guys have anything to add to this one?
Well, Manhattan's very good, and I saw them last week. Junction City and Manhattan right now would have to be the considered the class of Centennial League with Topeka High right there at 1A. Yeah. So you know, they've lost to the Junction, but now High has Manhattan coming up, and I believe they have them coming up.
I think it's pretty soon.
Yeah, and that'll be a big game to decide just how that Centennial League's going to shake up.
Yeah, I mean, and total opposite type teams. In Manhattan, a very veteran team, very experienced, especially up front. In Highland Park, still a young squad with Fahrencraft trying to just kind of figure out the pieces that it has. It's just not a good recipe for success for them. They get a kickoff return from Jaquez Barksdale, and anytime you get something that's a bright spot you can build on. So maybe if they can get the ball in his hands and he can start making some plays, they can get some momentum going.
First points of the season for them.
Absolutely.
All right, well, that'll wrap up this week's edition of Extra Points. Thanks again, sports fans. Remember to visit cjonline.com and prepzone.com for all your high school sports coverage. We'll see you next week.